now down to 10 on the debate stage. Candidates have 2 hours to make their case to the American public. It's a critical phase, of course, for the Democratic field. So which of the frontrunners has the most to lose or to gain tonight? We've got a new poll that we had to do a double take on as well.
So joining us to talk about all things debate are Eduardo Rodriguez. He's a principal at the Raven Group, and Gabby Orr is a White House reporter for Politico. Thank you guys for joining us.
Great to see you guys.
Absolutely, 2 friends of the show. So, I mean, we'll basically focus this part on the top 4 candidates. So we've got Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg. Eduardo, we were just talking to our Hill reporter on the ground, and what I was really thinking is that a lot of the critical questioning is going to come for Buttigieg and Warren. Buttigieg because he's seemingly on the rise in Iowa, maybe in New Hampshire. We can talk about that poll later. But I mean, there's no denying that he seems to be on an upswing, largely from media coverage. What do you think he's going to face in particular tonight? Because he hasn't taken the main shots.
Right. Well, it's interesting because every candidate wants to get in the top 3, and then once they do, they pay for getting to the top 3. They end up becoming right in the middle of the bullseye. I think he's going to continue to build off of what the media has given him over the last few weeks, where his arrogance and his confidence has really stepped up to demonstrate that he's got what it takes to be a leader, and he's going to continue to play that through tonight, which means he's going to fight back. He's going to have to fight back. He knows he's going to be a target, which means he'll continue what he was doing before, taking some swipes at Elizabeth Warren and pushing her further to explain how her policies make sense. And then on Biden, I mean, part of his campaign has been it's time to pass the torch. And so, Biden's going to do, I mean, it's better off for Buttigieg just to let Biden do whatever he does. Maybe he'll have another record player incident or not.
Well, they're not fighting.
No, they're really not, which is why I think his bigger fight's going to be with Elizabeth Warren. With Biden, if there's an opportunity that opens up, I think Buttigieg is going to play into it.
I also wonder if he might face some incoming heat, even more so than the moderators, from Cory Booker, from Kamala Harris, from some of the candidates of color on the stage over his record as South Bend mayor. I mean, just in the few past days, we've learned more about his record there. We've learned more about his Douglas plan, which he claimed had been endorsed by prominent African Americans in South Carolina, who, when contacted by Ryan Grimm at the Intercept, were like, no, we don't support this. We were stunned when we saw our names on it. Used a stock photo to go with that plan of a woman who was in Kenya. So there's a good bit for fellow candidates to work with. I almost wonder if he's going to take more heat from some of those other lower polling contenders than from the moderators.
Yeah, it's an easy attack line, especially given the events that have unfolded this week and given the location of this debate. It's happening in Atlanta, which obviously has a large African-American population.
Great point.
And so I do think that not only are the moderators going to play to that and ask him questions about how he believes he can make inroads with black voters, but I also do think that the candidates on stage of color will go after him. And so far, just based on the plan that he released this week, the way that he's interacted with African-American voters on the campaign trail, I don't think that Pete Buttigieg is coming into this debate with a strong line of defense against those attacks. And so that will be an interesting thing.
You're right, Gabby. He's got the greatest earned media in the history of man, and he's still got 0% amongst black voters. I mean, look, a couple months ago, he was a nobody. He was at 0%. We were all kind of laughing about it. Now he has no excuse, right, Eduardo? Like, they basically saw it, and they're like, no, we don't want that. And even after the Douglas plan, he's gone to South Carolina. I mean, in Atlanta, like to your point, there's a thing called Super Tuesday, and it's all through the South, and there's a lot of black voters that reside.
Well, his character, though, he's going to take this on straight on. He's not going to shy away from it or try to blame someone else. Even with the South Bend issue, he took it as the buck stops with me. And I think he's going to go with that. Whether or not that's going to work, I think at the very least, communities of color will look at it as someone who's willing to take responsibility and bring people together. Now, again, like you said, Super Tuesday. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but at least that putting it out there, and whether or not the lower rung candidates are going to take swipes at that. I mean, it's an opportunity for them, absolutely.
He really can't be considered a top tier contender until he gets out of 0% with black voters. I mean, that's just the reality. Sure, Iowa and New Hampshire can look great for you, which, by the way, we should talk a little bit about that New Hampshire poll that caught a lot of attention, has him leading, surging into first place, jumping up 15 points since September. However, This poll only polled 255 people, margin of error of 6%. And when you dig into who they polled, they way oversampled both college degree holders and grad degree holders, which are the strongest places of support for Pete. Now, I'm not saying that he's not on the move. I think he is on the move among white voters, so that is real, but I would take this particular poll with a massive grain of salt.
Absolutely. And there was a Morning Consult poll released this week as well that had him behind Elizabeth Warren and behind Bernie Sanders and behind Joe Biden among early primary voters.
We've got it up there.
I mean,
there you go.
Take this poll and put it up against that, and it shows that you really have to be careful and look deep at the sample sizes in a lot of these early primary polls and consider the fact that these candidates are in a very close horse race right now. And I think it's a lot closer than we in the media want to admit, because we all have our favorite candidates. We want to prop up different candidates. And so it is important, and this is a great example of something that we need to pay close attention to.
You're right, Gabby. And that's something we haven't talked yet about Bernie and Biden. And I do think, Eduardo, Bernie in particular has a real moment here where he could take this opportunity to really differentiate himself with Elizabeth Warren. I mean, she kind of, stuck her foot in her mouth whenever it came to this Medicare for All transition plan. He's got all the ammo that he's ever needed in order to really, set a stark contrast. Already voters in New Hampshire, some of the crosstabs we've been looking at, voters view him as more progressive than Elizabeth Warren. And if he wants to kind of lock on that vote, he needs to do that. But that's not his style. And it's a problem for him.
Yeah.
It's a problem for him.
I think he, coming off of the health issue, he springboarded with AOC to help him break through and say that, this campaign's not done, my health is great. He's really got to go in there now to say everything that we've been talking about, we've been building up on. He's got to show that he's bringing more to Elizabeth Warren, and also the contrast, even though it is between him and Elizabeth Warren in that camp of the Democratic base, but he also has to demonstrate something more and stronger than Biden.
I agree. I mean, that moment he had last time was phenomenal when he looked at Joe Biden. He's like, let's talk about the things that you got done.
Let's talk about your record.
PNTO. But here's the thing, though. At the end of the day, Gabby, he's like, Joe's my friend. He doesn't hit him, and it's like, he's not your friend. I mean, nobody up there is your friend. And he seems to have a level of congeniality, which comes from kind of like being in the Senate for 40 years, but that's not kind of what voters want right now.
If he starts singing happy birthday to him at the top of the debate, it's not going to be a real brawl. It's not going to be a real brawl. But it is an opportunity for him, because I think a lot of, outside of the AOC and that housing legislation that they've tried to introduce and try to really build a lot of attention around, he's been a lot quieter.
He's springboarded. He's gained in the polls a couple of points. This is one of the strongest times of his campaign in terms of his positioning. Now he's got to show that he can actually take that front runner spot. That's kind of the moment that he's at right now.
He's in a tough spot too, because his likability numbers are far more positive than Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden. And I think one of the reasons for that is because he is congenial, as Sagar was saying. It's because he doesn't go after his fellow candidates.
It's true.
He didn't do it in 2016, and I know a lot of people who were Bernie Sanders fans wanted him to go after Hillary Clinton more, and he didn't. And so he has a track record of doing this, and I think tonight is a pretty critical moment for him, because if he decides once again to sort of lay off of them and talk about his own plans and his own vision for the future, I don't think that that's going to propel him to where he needs to be.
Yeah, he's just going to stick at three. I mean, one of the things I've seen said about him is he treats debates like he's at a campaign rally, where he's like, we will, and it's like, that's not what a debate is. It's a great differentiator. Use the rally to rally, use the debate in order to challenge.
To contrast,
and
I mean, he didn't go after Hillary Clinton, and she was
he
the
lost.
nominee, and he wasn't. So, all right, we want to talk more about the debate after a quick break.